Hello, everyone. I'm Bethan Jepson, Phil's daughter and business partner, and I'm hijacking his podcast for a very special reason. Myself, Phil, and our other business partner, Jan Mark, are bringing you a special 4-part series on how you can buy a business for a more fulfilling career whilst building a 7-figure asset and securing your legacy for yourself and your family. After 3 years of doing this now, we all felt it important to open this door to others and pull back the curtain on what we believe is going to be the next big career shift and wealth generation strategy for leaders and ambitious professionals like you who want to have more freedom in your work, the ability to utilize your skills and network to benefit yourself rather than a boss or board of directors, maximizing your personal wealth and the joy and purpose of having an impact and leaving a legacy. We'll be sharing how you can buy an established business so it comes complete with an established team, proven profit margins, a book of existing customers, skipping the struggle of going through that startup process where you have to build all this from scratch and it's a lot of uncertainty. I don't know about you, but we've been there, done that, and we don't want to do it again. And fundamentally, how you can move on from a job or a business that no longer excites you or challenges you to put your skills and passions to better use, building something meaningful for yourself. We believe this is a better opportunity than investing in things like property or the stock market, and we're going to tell you why. We're also going to be completely transparent and share the challenges that we've personally encountered along our business buying journey, and we are committed to keep sharing our ups and downs with you as we go on to acquire our 4th business in 3 years. We're not so far down the line that we've forgotten what it's like to get started. So we want to put our hands back and bring you on this journey with us because we believe this to be an untapped opportunity that can benefit professionals and leaders who share aspirations to live a free and more purposeful life, whether in your 20s like I was when I started, or your 50s like Phil was. If you want to learn more from us, we are building a waiting list for our free newsletter, where we go into more details on the strategies, learnings, and tools that we mention in these podcasts. But we won't do it if there's not the demand. So if you are intrigued, then head to uk-bcp.com and sign up, and you'll get the direct learnings from us on the buying businesses journey. For now, enjoy part 1 of this special 4-part series. Okay, so why don't we start by introducing ourselves, give a bit of a summary of our kind of career journeys to this point, and I guess how we came to find each other and this buying businesses opportunity. So Phil, I don't know if you want to start.
Yeah, sure. I'm Phil. Hi. I think I worked out the other day, this is sort of like my 4th career. I can't remember if it's 4th or 5th, but it's
you never have too many.
like that. 4.0, I think. Yeah, I sort of found business along the way. I spent quite a lot of my life not really knowing what I wanted to do and thinking that whatever it was, I hadn't quite found it, but I think now I have. That's quite good. I started out reasonably conventionally. Well, actually, yeah, I suppose it wasn't at its time. It was probably less conventional because after school I went to university, but in those days, maybe only 10% of people or even less went to university. So I was the first one in my family to do it. So I suppose it would be conventional now, but less so then. I went to university, did law because I didn't really know what else I wanted to do, and law seemed to be vaguely interesting. And then after university, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and actually did a bit of business type stuff, but all around retail really. But then that didn't seem like a proper job, so I joined the police for a while. Did that, which was very interesting and taught me a lot, but I realized wasn't what I wanted to do. So decided to become a lawyer. Did all the training, qualified, and then spent the next 15 years or so as a lawyer, which again was interesting. Went quite a long way, made quite a good career, learned a lot, met some interesting people, and then decided again it was time to move on. So 3.0 was recruitment. Having quit the legal profession with a wife, 2 kids and a mortgage, needed to make money. And so I needed to, even though I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore, needed to do something that used what I learned and stuff so far. So moved into legal recruitment. And that also taught me about business, because I ended up starting my own business doing that, and went to business school, did an MBA, and started to realize that actually it was the business stuff that interested me. So did the recruitment thing for, again, 15 years. Before that, just reached I suppose it's felt at the time like a natural conclusion. And at that point in time, I discovered the idea of buying businesses. I'd also discovered JT Fox and quite a lot of other stuff, mainly due to my daughter, who kept introducing me to things. And got into the whole idea of building a group by buying businesses. Didn't know to begin with particularly what sort of businesses they were going to be, but the more I got into it, the more I was fascinated by manufacturing and engineering, probably because I'd never had any dealings with it before. So hence now being involved in building a group of engineering businesses, or engineering and manufacturing businesses. As part of all that, I went off to do a crazy seminar in New York, as you do. Hey, let's go to New York and do a seminar, which was just in the early part of 2020, at which I met this weird German couple. We got talking. We talked a bit at the event, and then kept in touch afterwards. So my connection, friendship, business journey, whatever, with Yanni really started then back in New York. Although actually it was mainly Yanni's wife, Jennifer, that I spoke to. Didn't really get to know Yanni till afterwards. Yeah, the connection grew because we discovered lots of shared interests, and it went from there. And somehow along the way, my daughter, who has to bear a lot of the responsibility for this in the first place, having been with me and gone off to do her own thing, sort of came back at some point. Hence, the 3 of us are now a team. And that's where we're at.
Can I just ask a follow-on question, just because I know there'll be people listening to this who maybe they're in the position that you were, where they were, a lawyer or some sort of professional, or even, they're a small business owner already, like you were in the recruitment side, but they're not loving it anymore, and they're kind of thinking about, should I quit? Is it time to quit? Is quitting giving up? Like, what advice would you give to people who, are kind of wanting to change direction, and maybe buying businesses is that direction, but they're struggling to make the decision around, quitting and what that means?
Yeah, I mean, I may have used that word, but it's not really about quitting as such, because it's a journey, it's an evolution, and buying businesses is a tool. It's not a be all and end all in itself. So buying a business or buying businesses is just a way of moving along a particular path. I think what I would say to people is you need to feel fulfilled in what you do. It doesn't really matter what that is. If you're not fulfilled in what you do, then don't do it. Do something else. And have the courage to evolve, have the courage to move forward, have the courage to change and develop into whatever that thing is. I think we have a right to be fulfilled, but also we have a duty to contribute. And if you're living and not contributing, then that's a bad thing. But we can contribute. I mean, contributing doesn't have to be onerous. It doesn't have to be a chore. You can contribute in a way that fulfills you, so that you're getting something out of it as well as giving something. But if you're not giving, then nicest possible way, what the hell are you here for? Because you're going to be dead, and once you're dead, all you leave behind is what the impact you've had on the world and on other people who live longer than you. So
yeah, and it's that piece around legacy, which I think is kind of what you're getting to. I mean, obviously it is something important to all three of us, otherwise we wouldn't be doing what we're doing now, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But yeah, it's interesting what you say. Yanni, do you want to kind of tell our listeners who you are, how you got here, and all the fun stuff in between?
Well, I mean, the end of the story, Phil already gave that, and indeed, I think I never even said hello to you, to be honest, on that event. So as people might catch from that, I'm not really the networking guy when it comes to events. That's usually done by my wife. That's why we go to events like that together. Yeah, but a little bit on my background. So I actually, after my A levels, I studied physics for 2 years. And the reason for that was not because of the laws of physics, even though I like it because it explains a lot of how the world works. And but at one point, I like, when you're trying to figure out what to do after school finishes, you ask people on like, what did you do in order to get where you are? So I asked my dad. So my dad is an electrical engineer. I knew what he was doing, and I didn't like what he was telling. So I'm like, okay, I'm not doing that. My mother is an architect, and she was self-employed. So I saw that, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be self-employed, and I'm not going to be an architect because that doesn't intrigue me. So I asked my dad what his boss studied, and he's like, yeah, he studied physics. So I'm like, okay, in order to be a VP, so a vice president, you actually have to study physics. So far, so logic. At least for me, like being 18. Now I know better, but that's in hindsight, we all know a lot of difference. So I started with physics, and then I figured out at one point in one of the professors, it was in, I think, theoretical physics, he's like, yeah, we're gonna like now start calculating the distance between star 1 and star 2. I don't remember the names of the stars. And at that moment, I'm like, what am I doing here? It's like, that is not interesting. I don't care. Why would I ever, like, I like stars, but not to calculate that stuff. So I changed to industrial engineering. And I think that was the best, because it's far more practical. I had an understanding, and it gave me both. It gave me the technical side, and it gave me the business administration side, which is really unique in terms of that. And after that, I started with a startup. So went to the US for 6 months, and then actually the startup was bought by then a bigger company called Schneider Electric, and that's how my corporate career started. So I did a corporate career. So I worked in Germany for Schneider, and then because of good performance, I got the chance to change to France. So I spent like 3 years in France, and I went back to Germany, and I spent another 2 years in Switzerland before I actually then left on good terms with Schneider Electric. And during that time, I basically my main job was to build service teams and to organize service divisions in terms of profitability, in terms of supply chain, in terms of technical training and things like that. And I always enjoyed working with people, but I also always wanted to do something different, like something where I can have more of an impact than playing by a corporate rule book that you haven't written yourself. So because I'm really bad when it comes to following rules that just simply do not make sense. So that is like one thing, and that for me was then like just leaving was really a good feeling, even though it was the end of 2021 and in the midst of the pandemic. But in hindsight, I think it was, we can debate the timing, but it was the right decision.
100%. And when did the business you have with your wife, Jennifer, like the Legacy Builders, when did you kind of set that up? Because I'm assuming there was a bit of overlap.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap. That actually started in 2017.
Oh, wow.
So it's 5 years old. It's like 2 weeks older than our son. So the launch was exactly like 14 days before he was born, because that was one of the things, because we didn't know how it goes after the birth. So we said, like, we want to launch it before, and then it's launched, and then we can adapt whatever comes after he's born. We're just gonna adapt to that. So that's being restructured. So she's doing the main work on that.
And because the ethos, the reason we kind of want to do this podcast and other educational content, I'm assuming it's similar reasoning to why you kind of set up Legacy Builders. So like what is that? What was driving that desire for you to educate people on money and investment? And
well, it's like Legacy Builders is born out of the out of an idea that in Germany, a lot of people, and that at that time it was Germany, but I think it's worldwide. It's kind of the same phenomenon. People spend a lot of time with planning all kinds of stuff, including their vacation, and very little time on actually trying to understand finances and trying to understand how money works, where money is coming from. And so the idea behind Legacy Builders Global was to level the playing field, to give people a chance that if they want to know, they can know, because you cannot make, like in Germany, they have a saying, you can lead a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink. So it's like, it provides that chance, and it just wants to give people access to investments where bigger investors have access to. And that's kind of the same, I think, for Allied Global Engineering, is to give like smaller companies the chance to benefit from things that only bigger companies usually have, like marketing, social media, and that are highly underestimated, at least in Germany, in small businesses, how important those things are.
Absolutely. Okay, and I'll just quickly give an overview of my short and sweet journey.
Yes, please.
So I'm Bethan, and I am Phil's daughter, if you hadn't quite worked that out yet. With all his kind words before. So it was funny, actually. We've all kind of said this in one way or another, but I remember watching my dad Phil kind of running his recruitment business through the recession of 2008. So I don't know, how old was I then? I think I was in high school, so teenager. And I remember thinking to myself, oh God, I never want to have my own business because it looks like hell. And yet here we are. But anyway, so I graduated wanting to save the planet. That was my thing. I was gonna study the environment at uni, and I was going to go on to work for some amazing conservation charity or some sustainability company or whatever. So kind of worked really hard, really hard on that dream, to be honest. I worked really hard during school. I always have done. Bit of a perfectionist at heart. I think a lot of people in the engineering space can relate to that.
Probably.
Yeah. And like was always given the gold stars, always told I was something special, gifted and talented program, you're going places. And then lo and behold, you graduate from university and you're one in a million. You're in a sea of other graduates all competing for the same jobs. And I kind of crashed, to be honest. I think I'd worked so hard to get to this point where I was waiting for life to kind of start. And I was like, it was like this make or break moment, really, because I was so burnt out, it was ridiculous. And when there wasn't the straightforward, yes, we want you, we're going to hire you, I took that very personally and kind of crashed. So there was a period in my early 20s when I felt quite lost and didn't know what to do. And it's funny because obviously Phil, my dad, talks about how I helped him, make this transition and do, find the thing that fulfills him. But Phil was the one that really helped me kind of get out that dark hole, because he brought me into his business as like admin assistant and just said, it's okay, like take your time, like stay as long as you want, do, just find your feet, apply for some jobs. In the meantime, you've got a place here. And that was the recruitment business. And I think because of my interest in the environment and wanting to like solve that massive climate change problem. And when I came into like Phil's business and realized actually business is just solving a problem. It's just whether you're solving a problem for customers, solving a problem for the employees, as in like trying to make their lives easier and better and make their jobs easier, or like solving problems for the management team, like profitability, getting suppliers that you can trust, that kind of thing. I actually found I had the mindset and I guess work ethic and just approach to problem solving that was actually really useful in a business, unless Phil tells me any differently now. But I think at the time I like to think that I surprised people, because I think I came in quite quiet and subdued and a bit lost, and a few months later I'd really found my feet and was networking and building a personal brand for myself and just learning all sorts of things. That's the beauty of a small business, I think, especially when you get to go in from like on the ground level, like you literally learn every area of business. So from the get-go I was learning all about like the operations and admin side, and then I got into marketing because it just made common sense that you need to be on social media, you need to have a presence, you need to be networking. And then the operations director left, and then there was this gap, and I was like, well, I'm going to learn more about that and finance, and kind of taught myself about accounting and bookkeeping. And I mean, my dad, Phil, is a great salesman as well. So, and the beauty of an open plan office is you get to listen to everyone's phone call. So I was like learning about sales just from like listening into people's calls and having ideas of how we could grow sales. And yeah, and bit by bit, I think Phil and the other director at the time started to trust me. And yeah, in the end, we were kind of like, I suppose a bit similar to now. We were like a three-person team, management team, and it was great fun for a good couple of years, until, like Phil said before, I I did go off and do my own thing for a bit. I wanted to really see if what I was doing in his business worked in other businesses. I wanted to see if I was actually, I actually had something of value and I wasn't just delusional. And my dad was too kind to tell me that. So I went off and started off in marketing consultancy. I worked for a couple of what they called themselves life coaches, and this is through a period where I was, I guess, getting more interested in health and well-being, because I had mental health challenges, as I said. So so that kind of coaching industry really fascinated me, because you were diving in deep on individual people and trying to get the best out of them. So I ended up then going into like coaching, but more on like the business side. So I'd work with like small business owners and just try and help them, like, I guess, fulfill their potential and get out their own way. So I did that for a couple of years. Again, timing was interesting because when I started that, the economy was all good and everything was bright and shiny, and then the pandemic hits and and we all have to reassess life. But I think what the pandemic really taught me was that it's actually quite lonely living this like freelance. I mean, you get it on social media, this like laptop lifestyle, like, oh, you can travel anywhere, work from anywhere. Sounds great. Like it sounds great on Instagram, but it's actually quite a lonely endeavor. And when you do have challenges, whether it's pandemics or personal challenges, nobody actually cares about the success of your business but you. And I found that quite isolating, quite lonely. I say, meanwhile, Phil had been looking at buying businesses as like a second, we'll say a second option. He said this was fourth option, fourth career. And actually, when you mentioned JT Fox, who's if you don't know, he's a kind of business coach, quite a famous business coach. And I'd also sat down with him and he'd also said to me, oh, you'd be great at buying businesses. I mean, this is back in 2018, but when I was like 26, and I was like, oh God, I don't even know what that means. So it was something that I'd thought about, but didn't have a clue how you'd go about doing it. And it was just weird coincidence that then Phil kind of stumbled across it as well, but actually had the courage to learn how to do it. And I think that's something, I think that's something I'll always be grateful for, is that Phil had the courage to do something to make the change, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for that. So in a nutshell, that's how we've all ended up here, as a little trio. And like I said, hopefully from that you as the listener has kind of gauged that we do have this strong ethos to give back, and we've all come at it in slightly different ways in the past, but I think we all genuinely believe in this model as a great business model, but also a great kind of life model for, like Phil said, living a fulfilled life, but also like with like what you were saying, Yanni, about leveling that playing field. It gives people the opportunity to like leaders who are in corporates or leaders who are currently working for these big companies who are always squashed down by ultimately the CEO or the board of directors or investors or whoever. I think it gives people a path into something else that they can create their own, freedom, legacy, impact, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I'm excited to really go into educating everybody on this amazing vehicle. And in 2 weeks' time, please look out for part 2 of this series, where we'll be going into more details on the pros and cons of buying a business versus starting a business. And we'll also be discussing what we think you need to be successful in buying a business and then running that business. So we're talking skills, knowledge, mindset, and there's a couple of stories in between that make it a fairly entertaining listen. So look out for that episode in 2 weeks' time, part 2 coming soon.